Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Applying Person-Centered Care in the Appointment with Cherilee Rutherford. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. You have joined the presentation listening using your computer speaker system by default. If you prefer to join over the telephone, just select telephone in the audio pane and the dial-in information will be displayed. If you have a slow internet connection, we recommend you listen via computer phone and not over your computer speakers. You have the opportunity to submit text questions to today's presenters by typing your questions into the questions pane of the control panel. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation. We will collect these and address them during the Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted to the CAA website within 2 business days. CAA webinars do count for continuing education credits. For those attending this session live, you will receive a thank you for attending email. That is your record of attendance in CAU. More CAU information can be found on our website for attendees watching the recorded version. And now I'd like to thank our sponsors, Ida Institute and CAA, for sponsoring this webinar. I would now like to introduce our host for the session, Sarah Mason, President of CAA. Dr. Sarah Mason currently serves as the Academic Coordinator for Clinical Education at Dalhousie University, where she teaches courses in clinical methods in pediatric rehabilitation. She serves on the Advocacy Committee as well as the Practice Education Committee at the School of Communication Sciences and Disorders. She also supervises patient care through the Dalhousie Hearing Aid Assistance Program and on-site audiology clinic at the school. Sarah, welcome.
Thanks, Tracy. Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. As Tracy said, my name is Sarah Mason. I'm the current president of CAA, and I am the host of today's webinar. CAA announced our new partnership with the Ida Institute earlier this year. The Ida Institute is a nonprofit organization founded in 2007. Their mission is to build a community that embraces person-centered care and empowers people to get their hearing care that they need. They work with clinicians, academics, and people with hearing loss to create resources that help people develop the knowledge, skills, and confidence to better manage their hearing loss. We are excited to have Cherilee Rutherford, the senior audiologist at the Idas Institute. Cherilee's professional qualifications include a bachelor's degree in speech-language therapy and audiology, a master's of health science, and a professional doctorate in audiology, as well as a postgraduate, hi Cherilee, a certificate in teaching and learning for higher education and online facilitation. Cherilee's role at the Ida Institute involves the facilitation of Ida innovative seminars, international training and presentations, development of courses, and providing audiologic input into Ida tools and resources. So welcome, Cherilee, and I'll pass things over to you now.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from my side to all of you over there in Canada. And thank you so much to Sarah and the CAA for this very kind invitation to join you on this webinar. I'm just delighted to spend this time with you, and thank you for opting in and spending time with us today. So I'm going to say thank you very much to Sarah also for that lovely invitation to the Ida Institute. She said everything already that I plan to introduce you to. For anyone who is perhaps not aware, the Ida Institute is developing, and we're passionate about promoting person-centered tools and resources that we actually co-create with many professionals like yourselves from around the world, and we enjoy that process very much. We then make those tools and resources available freely on the Ida website for professionals, and some of those tools are applicable to patients or clients, and we make those available freely, and we would love for more and more people to continue to use those tools to promote person-centered communication even further. So I thought I would share with you some lockdown photos from Cape Town, where I am based. Over here, we are still under pretty strict lockdown conditions, and I guess if we're trying to look on some bright side, there's it gives us an opportunity to share some beautiful photos of our cities in lockdown. And so these are a few from Cape Town, where there's no traffic and no people. And admittedly warmer weather. Over here it's winter. It's about 10 degrees where I am today, so nice and cold. And I believe Canada's, or some parts of Canada's, having a heat wave. So all I will say is good luck with that. So as we get started, I just wanted to give credit and acknowledgement to my colleague and our wonderful collaborator, Dr. Samantha Tai, who's based at the University of Melbourne, who co-created this course with the Ida Institute. And so now, as we're going to get into the content of things, I'm going to switch off my webcam so that we can focus on the content. So in our time together today, we're going to review the concept of PCC and define the key components of PCC in hearing care and rehabilitation. We're going to revisit the Calgary-Cambridge Guides and introduce the 4 habits to facilitate a person-centered interaction. And we're going to review the key communication skills that are fundamental in any hearing care or rehabilitation scenario. Okay, let me just go back one. All right, so as we start to talk about PCC, I think it's important that we make sure that we're all on the same page. And these are the building blocks of PCC that we use at the Ida Institute to really guide our decisions and the tools and the resources that we make available. So the building blocks of PCC are empathy, active listening, shared goal setting and decision making, the involvement of family and friends, understanding of individual preferences and needs, and then dialogue that is based on open-ended reflective questions. So we have just reviewed the elements of PCC, but communication is actually the tool we use to enact person-centered care during our interaction with patients. And while there are a number of definitions of PCC, information gathering, information providing, shared decision making, acknowledging patients' emotional responses, and building a therapeutic relationship are readily cited in the medical literature and considered the key communication functions to enact person-centered care. Studies that investigate the degree to which professionals are oriented towards PCC have shown that clinicians all around the world generally show a moderate preference for person-centered interactions. So how does that then relate back to everyday practice? Do hearing care professionals' person-centered preferences translate into actual clinical practice? Observational studies looking at audiologist-patient interactions during real clinical appointments showed that despite self-reported preferences towards person-centered care, professionals had a tendency to interact with their patients biomedically. And if we have time at the end of this presentation, I might share with you a snippet of an email that I received from a colleague today, stating more or less the same thing. And this may negatively impact patient outcomes, such as hearing aid uptake, patient satisfaction, and adherence to recommendations. A number of factors exist that may hinder the professional to enact in a person-centered manner. You may have noticed that audiologists perform many assessments that require a substantial amount of technical skills. And when we interview audiology course coordinators, it was acknowledged that more emphasis was placed on teaching and assessing technical competencies than person-centered interactions. And when audiology students were interviewed, they reported placing a greater focus on technical tasks, such as performing a hearing test, and they often felt ill-prepared when communicating with patients. And although technical skills are important, our scope of practice goes beyond just being good technicians. And so it's important to foster person-centered communication skills to build a therapeutic relationship with our patients. Communication is a skill that can be taught and cultivated. And in the medical discipline, research has shown that doctors who have undergone person-centered communication training were better able to identify and handle their patients' emotions than doctors without training. Practice and individual feedback support the active learning of communication skills. So I'd like to introduce you to the Calgary-Cambridge framework that guides us in how we can integrate clinical with communication skills during the medical interview. The framework contains a sequence of interview tasks that begin with initiating the session, followed by gathering information, performing a physical examination, explanation and planning, and closing the session. The framework also highlights the importance of building the relationship throughout the appointment to develop trust and rapport. And additionally, in any clinical appointment, having a structure will guide your patient's expectations and give structure to the appointment. So we might also think about this framework as the anatomy of an appointment, showing all the main components of what we do in our typical consultations. But the framework has a comprehensive list of about 71 communication processes, and these are based on medical settings and therefore may not all be applicable to all hearing care scenarios. And so with that in mind, I will introduce you to the 4 habits model to inform the key communication tasks that are relevant for audiology and that are transferable across different hearing care cases. So the 4 habits are based on empirical evidence and synthesis of research on medical interviews. The key communication skills are clustered into 4 habits that are associated with positive patient outcomes. These habits are invest in the beginning, elicit patient perspectives, demonstrate empathy, and invest in the end. And these habits are fundamental to interactions both within and outside hearing care, and it offers a descriptive means to think about clinical interactions, about how these interactions are structured. And the 4 habits have also been adopted as a teaching tool to guide feedback and assessment. So the communication tasks in the 4 habits exhibit a number of overlaps with the Calgary-Cambridge Guides. So for instance, the first habit, invest in the beginning, contains the task establish or create rapport quickly, elicit patient concern, and plan the visit with the patient. And this shares similarity with initiating the session in the Calgary-Cambridge Guide of establishing patient rapport and identifying reasons for the consultation. The second habit of eliciting the patient perspective focuses on gathering information from the patient. The third habit in demonstrating empathy sits within building the relationship in the Calgary-Cambridge Guides. And then finally, the 4th habit of invest in the end corresponds to the explanation of the diagnosis and closing the session. And so something just to note is that each habit also looks at providing structure and forms part in building the relationship with the patient. So let's take a closer look at the first habit, invest in the beginning and listening to our patient's stories. So just as a reminder, the first habit coincides with initiating the session and gathering information in the Calgary-Cambridge framework. We meet a lot of new people through the course of our lives, and you are no doubt familiar with the notion of making a good first impression. Research has shown that first impressions are made within the first 2 to 7 seconds. And making a good first impression can help our interaction with a person, whereas a poor impression can leave a negative effect on the relationship, and that takes time to recover. So as we progress through the different habits today, or the different sections of the appointment, I will share with you quite short little video examples that I hope can be helpful to illustrate some of the skills in that section. So here is the first one, invest in the beginning.
I thought it would be nice if we had a little bit of a recap from where we started, because we're almost a year down the line now.
I know,
right?
It's surprising, isn't it?
I know, it really is.
Yeah.
And actually I was looking through everything and I was just thinking, like, we kind of dealt with little things along the way, but it's nice to do a consolidation now, if that's okay with you.
I think we were thinking along the same lines.
Fantastic.
In many ways,
Okay,
but,
good. We'll start with your hearing testing right at the beginning. So if we just start with that firstly.
Right.
Just a kind of a different way of looking at it, really, is you'll remember when we tested your hearing, when I tested your hearing, you'd already been wearing hearing aids for 6 years,
National Health
right?
Fund.
You've been wearing NHS hearing aids for 6 years. And when we looked at it, your right ear and your left ear the hearing levels were more or less the same. So if things were a little soft, you were missing it out. You were missing out your voice.
Yes.
And you really helped, actually, in a lot of way, contributing to the information that made
she
us
does.
make that decision.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Have my uses then.
And it's fantastic because you always come, you know, and
Yes,
that's such a big
of
part
course.
of these appointments.
Okay, so what did we see in this video? Well, we noticed in this video how the clinician used the first part of the appointment to recap and consolidate what they know about her client's hearing loss. And we could see in this clip that it was of value to the couple as well. The clinician created a warm and welcoming atmosphere and actively involved and encouraged the role of the communication partner in this appointment. We also noted how she started to plan the rest of the appointment with her clients. So why is it important to invest in the beginning of the appointment? It creates a safe and welcoming environment that promotes trust and rapport. And this allows the patient to open up about their main concerns for you to help guide expectations in the appointment. And this can help to increase the efficiency of the appointment by preventing time wastage on assessment that are not really required to address the patient's main concerns. And the next few slides, we will go through the main tasks of establishing rapport quickly, eliciting patient concerns, and how we can plan the visit with the patient. So our initiative as a clinician plays a big part in building rapport with our patients in the beginning of the appointment. So this includes our preparedness. So for example, have we familiarized ourselves with the case notes so that we're informed with the patient's history? It may be reviewing what was done in a previous appointment, reading a referral form from a medical practitioner, or reviewing the completed telecare tools. Being prepared is not only a demonstration of professionalism, but it also gives us hints about what questions to ask and the type of assessments the patients may need. Preparation could also include rearranging chairs to create an inviting space where everyone can see each other and participate in the conversation. And it really can be as simple as making sure there's enough chairs if we know the patient's family member will also attend the appointment. When we greet our patients, we mustn't overlook the importance of introducing ourselves and everyone in the room, especially if we have a supervisor, a student, or a family member in the room. It acts as an icebreaker and it promotes a personal connection. And as a guide, we can address the patient to match how you would like to be addressed. So for instance, if you introduce yourself using your first name, you can use the client's first name. This really promotes an equal power dynamic. The second task in the beginning of the appointment is to elicit the patient's main concern. So can you tell me what brings you in today? Listening without interrupting. In medicine, research has shown that patients are interrupted approximately 18 to 23 seconds after they begin to speak and often won't have a chance to raise other concerns until later in the appointment. This may lead to premature testing and, again, inefficiencies with time management, but also misplaced support. Once the patient is finished, we can ask if there is any other concerns that we need to know of. The third task is to set an agenda with the patient to give structure and set expectations for the appointment. Inviting the patients to take part in setting the agenda is delving into shared decision-making, which is a core component of person-centered communication. Signposting can also be very important because we are not disregarding the main concern that is raised, but we want to find out what else. So for example, before I delve into more information about your main concern, is there anything else you want to get out of this appointment? And if the patient has stated many problems, then we may want to summarize what the patient has stated as an accuracy check, and then propose a simple outline of the appointment, and also then check if the patient agrees. So this brings us to the next phase of gathering information. We need to gather information in a way that lets the client know we're interested in what matters most to them. And it's useful if we can help clients prepare ahead of the appointment so they join us having already reflected about their most important communication situations and what they would hope to get out of the appointment. Our patients hold expert knowledge of their experience of their hearing issues, including their perspective on the potential causes. So first, we need to explore and understand what patients think cause their hearing issues. And this can not only help us with the diagnosis and the time frame, but it also helps patients understand their management options. Secondly, we also want to explore the impact of the hearing issue on the patient's daily activities, on their work and on their family life. And this is really the essence of adopting a holistic approach to care, and it aligns with the ICF model by the World Health Organization. Information on the patient's functional ability will help us with management planning and increased adherence to treatment recommendations. And you can also use tools from the Ida Institute website, like the communication rings or the Living Well tool, to find out more about the impact of hearing loss on the patient and their family or their communication partners. So up next, we have a short video clip showing how a clinician is exploring the client perspective in a consultation.
I noticed that you said here, sometimes you can't always get yourself positioned so that you are in the best place for the noise.
But the thing is, you can sit with the noise behind you as much as you can.
Absolutely.
And then somebody comes along and sits in front of you.
Yes.
And they've got children, or they're very noisy.
And so you can't move
And so you
mid-dinner.
can't move.
Yes.
You're actually stuck.
One of the things we could potentially do, and I can arrange this for you at another visit, is I'm going to give you another little device that you can use to be able to stream in those situations. So, in the same way that you were changing things and we talked about streaming from your phone, this is like a little remote microphone. Right. That if someone is across the table, so perhaps the 2 or 3 people across the table could share that, right? And that will pick up their voices and stream it directly to your hearing aid.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Okay, and so in this video, what you will have observed is how the clinician used the information from a completed telecare tool in the face-to-face appointment. In doing this, she facilitated an opportunity for them to speak about it and elaborate. And we also noticed how she expresses empathy and shared understanding, so the clients felt heard and understood. And this then paved the way for the clinician to discuss a solution directly related to that specific challenge. So they were having difficulties in the restaurant, and she said that they could look into a little remote microphone down the line. So to help clients and families reflect on their individual needs and priorities, you can use the Ida Telecare set of resources that can be sent to clients before their appointments. And the tools are actually very simple to use. You copy the link to the tool that you want your client to use and you send it to them over in an email. You then ask your client to email or print out the answers to discuss in their next appointment. And you can also include the link in the confirmation of their next appointment or use it as a follow-up. And so I would like to share with you another short video of 2 couples who have had the experience of using the telecare tools to prepare for their appointments. This video is about 2 or 3 minutes long, and the couple reflect on their experience and they share their thoughts about the usefulness of such an approach. The video features 2 Danish couples, but you can follow the translated conversations in the captions below.
Jeg synes det, man skulle sidde og udfylde papirerne der, eller man fik på mail, og man kunne udfylde det derhjemme, det synes jeg var rigtig godt. Fordi at man sidder lidt mere i vante omgivelser, og måske slapper lidt mere af, og man kan læse på det, og komme tilbage og tænke, vent nu lige lidt, var det også det, jeg ville... Fik jeg skrevet det, eller har jeg fået skrevet det, jeg egentlig tænkte på? Men også fordi, at hvis man først sidder over for nu en hørespecialist, eller hvor man... Er det tit, når man så kommer hjem, tænker, det fik jeg da ikke spurgt om, eller det skulle jeg have sagt, eller et eller andet. Så jeg synes, det er en god idé at få det hjem. Man får tænkt det mere igennem, så man er mere velforberedt, synes jeg i hvert fald.
Det, der var godt, det var, at når man sidder 2 med det, så får man tid til at læse det begge 2, og vi opfatter det formentlig på 2 forskellige måder, nogle af tingene, så man sidder og supplerer hinanden meget godt.
Jeg synes, det er en god idé, eller en fordel, fordi jeg synes, jeg føler mig mere klædt på. Altså nu føler jeg ligesom, at nu har jeg fået skrevet det ned, jeg godt vil have svar på, eller jeg godt kunne ønske mig hjælp til. Ikke? Fordi der er jeg i hvert fald som person, kunne jeg godt glemme, at jeg kom derop og blive lidt grebet af. Nu er der kun 10 minutter tilbage, og nu skal jeg huske at få spurgt om det hele. Ikke? Det jeg synes, også måske for hørespecialisten, forventer jeg i hvert fald, at hun også, eller han er bedre klædt på og bedre forberedt, så vi ligesom også hurtigt kan komme ind på, hvad er det egentlig, at der er mine ønsker eller forventninger, ikke? Fordi ellers kan vi bruge meget tid på måske også, altså, når det er det, du vil, og så skal man først ind og undersøge, hvor vedkommende måske allerede på forhånd, når jeg kommer derop, kan sige, at jeg har læst det, og der er de ting, vi måske kan afhjælpe for dig, ikke? Så jeg synes, det må være tidsbesparende og mere koncentreret for begge parter, faktisk, ikke?
Jeg synes helt klart, at jeg følte mig meget mere forberedt.
Det tænkte jeg også.
Ja.
Altså, der er nogle tanker, man har gjort sig på forhånd,
ja.
Sådan at man bliver mere ligeværdig samarbejdspartner med sin egen oplevelse. Altså, jeg bliver jo ikke audiolog af at gennemføre det der stykke værktøj, men jeg bliver meget mere bevidst om, hvad det er, måske jeg gerne vil have ud af en audiolog eller en specialist i møde med vedkommende.
Og det føltes meget naturligt at sidde og snakke om, selvom vi har kendt hinanden i 100 år.
Næsten.
Ja, næsten, ikke? Så var der jo stadigvæk noget at snakke om, selvom jeg godt måske synes, at det har vi da talt om før, altså måske bare ikke så struktureret lige omkring det her emne. Jeg tror, det var strukturen i det, der gjorde, at man fik rundet af på hver enkelt emne eller spørgsmål.
Ja, det er rigtigt.
Ja, jeg synes, det fungerede rigtig godt.
Okay, so in this clip, we saw that the client and the communication partners, they really appreciated reflecting about communication situations within the relaxed environment of their own home. There were no time pressures. They feel more prepared and they are not worried about forgetting to ask questions that are really important to them. They also valued reflecting together. They could zoom in on their needs and their expectations quickly, and they thought about this being a time saver. And then they also mentioned being an equal partner with the audiologist. And so you can see from the things that they've mentioned in this video that it relates very well back to those basic elements of PCC that we looked at in the beginning, and how gathering information using a telecare approach can actually help us to gather high quality information that would then support us more in the clinical appointment and possibly get more out of that appointment when we see the patient, whether that be virtually or face-to-face. Okay, so running throughout the appointment is the skill of building the therapeutic relationship and expressing empathy. And in the Calgary-Cambridge framework, building the relationship occurs throughout the entire appointment. And building the therapeutic relationship relies heavily on the clinician's ability to identify patients' emotions and to respond to them appropriately. Observational studies on audiologist-patient interactions showed audiologists rarely acknowledge patients' emotions or offer empathetic responses when patients expressed psychosocial concerns. Research has shown also that both students and experienced clinicians actually tend to feel more comfortable with informational counseling rather than personal adjustment counseling that includes dealing with patients' emotional concerns about their hearing impairment. For audiology students, the technical assessments can sometimes overshadow patient interactions, creating those missed opportunities to demonstrate empathy. But the good news is that we can learn how to respond appropriately to the patient's emotion and further improve our interactions. So up next, another short clip to demonstrate how empathy can be expressed in an everyday appointment.
Have you been using that third program a bit more?
I have.
And?
I have found it useful.
Okay, so...
It's better with the use of that than not having it.
Fantastic.
So it's a step in the right direction.
It's quite fun in the supermarket. that he has to. I said, have you changed programs? Are you on the noisy background one? And you're walking around and saying, have you changed it?
Do you know what? I think that's fantastic. I think you play a key role in that, because we have discussed that you are having some difficulties with memory, right? Yes. So that is a big strategy, is actually nothing that you have to do in this case, but that you remember, is he on the right program? Yes. And checking to see that he's on the right program. I think that's fantastic.
I think I don't do it enough, but if I'm constantly doing it as the situations change, yes, it gets a bit shirty.
Okay. Yes, because we don't always like
being told he says.
Okay.
Well, there's ways of saying it.
Thanks.
I'll say no more.
Well, even when I say it gently, you sometimes get a bit.
It's lovely.
Okay, so in this short clip, you will have noticed how the clinician used body language to express empathy. She made really good eye contact, and she was leaning forward to convey that she was actively listening and interested in what they had to say. She was encouraging, and you could hear her use words like fantastic and yes to encourage both the client and the communication partner. She also used her tone of voice as well as humor and laughter. And so I think it's worth highlighting that expressing empathy can take many forms actually. And it's not always as emotionally laden as we might imagine when we start talking about the concept of empathy. So our ability to demonstrate empathy is key in building the relationship with our patients. Empathy begins with understanding life from another person's perspective. Nobody has an objective experience of reality. It's all through our own individual prisms. And this quote by Sterling Brown recognizes the essence of empathy, which is to stand in someone else's shoes, but also the recognition that an individual's experience is shaped by their own unique perspectives. So when we interact with patients, we need to be self-aware of our own beliefs and communication behavior so that we are prepared to respond to our patients. According to the 4 habits model, demonstrating empathy requires 3 components: being open to the patient's emotions, discerning those empathetic opportunities, and then expressing empathy. And so in the next few slides, we will go through these areas in a little bit more detail. So before we convey empathy, we must first identify patients' emotions. And this is where we gain an in-depth understanding of the patient experience through active listening, and that is focusing on what they are saying. And we also want to closely observe the patient's gestures, their facial expressions, and tone of voice. Making good eye contact rather than focusing on our computer or clinical notes can help patients pick up on those cues. And then once we have identified patients' emotions through observations and active listening, we need to acknowledge their feelings and respond appropriately. And so what you see on the slide in front of you are just a few examples of empathetic responses. So naming, legitimation, encourage, and respect. And we can encourage patients' expression of their emotions by using open-ended questions such as, tell me more. And so similar to the observations of our patients' nonverbal behaviors, we also need to reflect on our own behaviors to convey empathy. So our own body language, gaze, tone of voice, and facial expressions, much like what you have seen in that last video that we watched together. So finally, let's take a look at the end stages of the appointment. In the Calgary-Cambridge framework, the final stages of the appointment occur after we have performed the assessments, whether it's a hearing test or fine-tuning of the hearing aids. And unlike the earlier stages of the appointment, where our main emphasis is to gather information, we now transition into information provision and share decision-making about management plans. And the final stages of the appointment provide an opportunity for us to clearly explain the diagnosis and come to a collaborative decision with our patients on the management plan. And research has shown the healthcare professionals' communication to be a significant factor. So the benefit of investing in the final stages of the appointment are the promotion of patient recall and understanding of their own diagnosis. And patients are more likely to adhere to your treatment recommendations and are satisfied with your hearing care. So how do we then invest in the end and ensure our patients are satisfied with their hearing service? The 4 habits again then advocates 3 very specific tasks that should be performed in any type of audiological appointment to demonstrate person-centered care. And these tasks are delivering audiological information. So for example, the diagnosis of a hearing loss or problems with the hearing aids or factors that are contributing to their tinnitus, providing education and joint decision-making, and also then closing the visit. And before we deliver any audiological information, it's important to think about what our patients want to know. So according to the 4 habits, patients generally want to know what is causing their symptoms or why they are experiencing their symptoms, and what can they do in terms of treatment or management of the symptoms. When we deliver a diagnosis, the results may actually be quite distressing for our patients. And this is where we need to consider and acknowledge the patient's emotions, as we discussed earlier. We can do this using appropriate verbal and non-verbal cues. And there's a lot of technical jargon in audiology, as we all know, so we must be conscious to avoid using them. Use simple and concise statements. So here are some examples of how we can deliver the information in relation to the patient's initial concerns that was established during the beginning of the appointment. And the goal is to really tailor the information back to the patient to help them understand and remember what is being said. Sometimes it can be appropriate to restate the patient's initial concern to tailor what information to provide to them. Us as audiologists, we often focus on explaining the audiogram, which can contain, again, a lot of jargon and may not answer the patient's questions. And therefore, it's worth asking what information the patient needs to know. And again, here are some examples of how we can encourage shared decision-making with our patients. So for example, we can ask, does everything make sense so far? Or how do you feel about these options? And looking out for any potential barriers. Are there anything, is there anything that may prevent you from taking on this recommendation? So the end stage of the appointment is to ensure that the patient understands what was discussed and what needs to happen going forward. It's also an opportunity for us to build further rapport and leave a really good impression. And the 4 habits highlights 3 key communication tasks we could do in this stage to achieve all these goals. So first, we can invite patients to ask further questions if they already haven't done so, and this allows for further clarification if they need that. Secondly, we need to continue to outline the next steps so that it's fresh in the patient's mind, and it can help with recall when they leave the appointment. If the patient is recommended to see another health professional, for example, then it's worthwhile providing some reassurance and ease any anxiety that they may have. And then finally, we want to end on a personal note to reaffirm the relationship, and this can be as simple as wishing them a lovely weekend or sharing a personal anecdote if something was raised during the appointment. So these are some example phrases to demonstrate how we can complete the visit. Do you have any questions about what we discussed? To summarize, and have a lovely holiday or enjoy your weekend or your holiday in Bali. Okay, so in our final video today, here is a very short example of the end phase of an appointment that I'm sure most of us can relate to.
Right. Okay. Perfect.
That's it.
Right, so just run through that again. So he's got to get the cream.
Right.
And use the cream, or leave it for 2 days, or do you want to do it straight away?
Shall we write that down?
Yes, please. Please.
Okay. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is maybe on this here, I'm just going to say E45 cream, yes, no more than 3 days in a row, and that when you should decide to use it is when it's very itchy. And put this back in yours.
That's very useful.
All right, pleasure. So that's there.
That's
I'm going
great.
to close that up.
Good. Thank
Perfect.
you. Yes,
Okay. Thank you.
Right.
Excellent.
All right.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much for coming in. It's lovely to see you both.
Right, so in this short clip, we noticed that the clinician repeated the most important information for the couple. She provided written instructions and simply ended with a thank you and a warm goodbye. So I hope that this short overview of the Calgary-Cambridge framework and the 4 habits can be useful for you to identify those key communication tasks that are fundamental to a person-centered approach to hearing care. And my hope is also that by dissecting our everyday appointments like this, it can support us to go back to the basics and help us reimagine and innovate our communication in each of these parts of the appointment. And so I will leave you with this quote by Matthew Kelly. And he says that success at almost anything rests upon this single principle. Do the basics, do them well, and do them every day, even when you don't feel like doing them. There are, of course, some lovely resources available on the Ida Institute website, both on the website and also in the Ida Learning Hall, that will support and reinforce the things that we've talked about here today. And you're welcome to explore that and to communicate with us and get back in touch about what you have found useful. And so with that, I want to thank you very much for your time and your attention. I hope that this can be meaningful to you. I'm going to switch on my webcam, and I'm very happy to take some questions and have a conversation with you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Cherilee. So we're now going to answer or provide you with some questions that have been submitted throughout the presentation. We've got some good ones. And as a reminder to our audience, just submit questions to the questions pane in your attendee control panel. So our first question is, let me just bring it up here, from Christine. She has a very good question about having some concerns about how patient-centered care can be implemented in our new reality. Right? I mean, we're telling people to stay in their cars, we're telling people to use masks. A lot of times case history is done over the phone. So, you know, life has really changed a lot, and a lot of these really great suggestions may not really translate very well. Do you have any sort of advice, or what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think, thanks, Christine. I think it's such a, you know, it's just the topic on all of our, at the forefront of our minds. You know, I think that in some ways it's easy to answer, and in other ways it's quite tricky to answer a question like that. And I can tell you that at the Ida Institute we are looking at this and defining a whole new project about how we can be of more help to people, you know, if we think about these unusual circumstances and these different kind of journeys that people are on. I think in broad terms, you know, what I can say first of all is that, you know, something from an Ida perspective where we can really support you is to, for example, look at some of those telecare tools. So think about the ways that we engage with patients. What can we send them online, and how do we engage with them online so that it doesn't feel impersonal? And I completely understand that that is that's a skill for us to develop, and we all have to become more comfortable with being on cameras, or working on how we come across on the telephone if someone can only rely on our voices, you know, speaking from behind masks and things like that. So I think there are a lot of things that we're getting used to. And for me, what helps me in my thinking when I think about those challenges is I always go back to those different elements of PCC. And for me personally, it's become a bit of a mantra, and I try and remember them and try to think in every situation, how can I be more empathic here? Or how can I, even if the patient, if I'm seeing the patient remotely, is there a creative way that I can involve the communication partner? And I think, you know, if we go back to those principles, I think it makes it easier to come up with creative ways. And then the other thing that I also fall back on is to say more empathy, more empathy, more empathy, and just exercise those empathic muscles, because the more we work on those and the more we try to really listen and put ourselves in the shoe of that person, or in the shoes of that person, if we fully try to immerse ourselves in their world, then we can come up with creative solutions. But it is when we have that distance between clinician and patient that we struggle to completely understand their world, and then we also struggle to come up with solutions that make sense to them. So I hope that that gives you a little bit of an answer to that.
So our next question is from Zara, and Zara asks, what are the advantages or differences in the 4 habits or the Cambridge model compared to some similar traditional communication consultation models based on individualized adults, a family service plan for hearing impaired persons?
I think what we like and why we use the 4 habits, for example, and why we rely on the 4 habits more so than the Calgary-Cambridge model is for the sake of simplicity. It really helps us to just focus on some very tangible, very specific communication tasks. And I like to talk about those 2 models together because when we see clients, there's always a specific order that we do things in. We welcome the patient, we gather information, we perform our clinical assessments or the tasks that we need to do. And then there's a bit where we need to share and exchange information and make plans. And so it's useful, I think, to use the Calgary-Cambridge framework to think about those different components, and then to think, okay, what can I do from a professional development point of view? If I say I'm committed to working in a person-centered way, what can I do to make my the way that I gather information from my patients? How can I make that more person-centered? And then really focus on that for 2 weeks or for a month. And I find that when you then use the 4 habits, that they are so simple and easy to use, and they're very practical. So it makes it highly implementable, and it's something that you can also share whether you're a student or whether you're a practicing clinician, and whether you're working on your own or with others in a setting. It's something that you can share and that you can help each other with. So in my mind, I think those are the reasons why we use it and why we promote it. It's for its simplicity, and it's linked to very positive patient outcomes.
Thanks, Cherilee. Next question is from Kara. Kara asks, where can I find the Ida telecare forms and other tools?
Yes, very easy. You simply just go to the idainstitute.com website, and you will need to have a login if you don't already have one. It's quick and easy to create a login. And as soon as you're in there, then you can click on one of the 4 main tabs at the top of the page, which will say Tools, and then you can just simply scroll down to the Tools section. I think it's also worthwhile to mention that the IDA tools can be embedded on your website. So again, whether you have a practice or whether you're working in a hospital setting, or you can, if you have access and the ability to embed things on your website, then you can do that as well. And that's been quite handy, and we've had quite a lot of requests for people wanting to embed it into their websites. And if that's something that's of interest to you, then you can simply contact us on the contact page again on the website, and we can send you the code that will help you to do that.
So our next question is from Isabel, and Isabel asks, well, first of all, thank you for the presentation. And do you have any recommendations about how patient-centered care can be taught in our educational programs?
Oh, that's one of my favorite things to talk about. So as an ex-academic and also now in my role at IDA, one of the things that I do is I work very closely with our university partners, and I think we should, Isabel, we should go for a virtual coffee so I can, spend half an hour to show you all the things that we can do together. But to say it very simply, there's amazing resources that we've developed, again, in collaboration with wonderful people around the world in the form of an IDA University course. And again, you simply go into the website, go to the tools section, and find the university course. And in there is just a world of ready-made presentations, activities, videos, reflective materials, anything that a lecturer could use. There's also things for clinical supervisors, and you're welcome to use what is available on the website right now, but we are also in the process of updating that a little bit. And then also just to say that we are, as part of the partnerships that we have with academic institutions, we are working on a project where we are defining some very specific PCC learning objectives that people in academia can then are welcome to use, so that it becomes part of the foundation or the DNA of your courses. So we're working on defining some PCC learning objectives, and we're also working on harvesting different ways of changing the way that we do marking and rubrics for students, so that when they go out in their clinical placements, we're trying to bring in PCC elements on which they will also be assessed, because we all know unless you get assessed on something, you're not going to pay all that much attention to it. So we're trying to kind of have a two-pronged approach where we working on the PCC learning objectives and also working on changing some rubrics, and we're hoping to share something around that a little bit later. But for now, there's some great courses in the Ida University course itself. Like I said, ready-made presentations and activities and videos and things to reflect on. And you're welcome to use them. You're welcome to download them. You don't need to ask our permission. It's already there, and you're welcome to use it. Please let us know. You can email me and let me know any feedback. You can adapt it. You can shorten it. If the presentation is too long and you only want to use certain slides, you can also do that. So there's some wonderful resources in there. And then I'll also mention, for those of you, most of you will probably in academia are now following a kind of blended learning approach. So you can also use the bite-sized learning modules within the IDA Learning Hall with your students. So I know of several universities that have, for example, taken the tinnitus course or the telecare course, and they've made that a compulsory little course for students to do before they take the module with their lecturer. There's many different ways. So Learning Hall modules I would recommend, and the IDA University course. And if you have any more questions about that, then you're welcome to email me.
Okay, we might have time for one, maybe two more questions. So Christina asks, I've seen many patients for testing before they see the ENT. I've always recommended they return for a hearing aid demo. They have not returned. What am I doing wrong?
That's a tough one. That's a tough one. It's hard to say just from hearing that, but perhaps we need to do a little bit more investigative work and find out what is the journey of that patient. I think we need to find out a little bit more information. I try and find out exactly where they go, what do they discuss, what are they told, how are they told information.
I think I've got a good follow-up question that sort of ties into that, which is asked by another Christine. Any advice on how to use patient-centered care to overcome objectives or barriers? So the big one, of course, is cost. Any advice on how to manage that with patient-centered care?
How to manage cost. I think when it comes to cost, of course, it's hard to talk about those things. We can't force patients to make decisions. We're there as guides and as facilitators, and I think that they have to be ready to make those choices for themselves. So I think a person-centered way to support them on their journey would be to use a tool, for example, like the stages of change, which is the circle, which you may have heard about at IDA. It's one of the older, one of the first IDA tools. And that's really helps you as a clinician to try and find out where the client is in their readiness for taking on technology or making a decision about hearing aids. And once we can identify what stage they're in, we can then tailor our information and their support so that maybe we realize that they're not, or they realize that they're not ready, and we can support them and by providing information, and so that they then, when they do become ready, then they know where to find us, and there's a trustworthy relationship that they will come back to. But it is about when they are ready, and not about the clinician necessarily pushing or trying to move that journey, hasten that journey, I guess. That's the one thing I would say. And then the other thing that I would explore with a patient is using another tool, is the box tool. And this is a tool that we use with patients when we notice that there's some form of ambivalence. So they realize that there's something wrong with their hearing and they want help, but they're also not quite ready. And so the box tool is something that I would then recommend you having a look at. And we've got a brand new motivation course, an updated motivation course that is available on the IDA Learning Hall, and that was just made available yesterday. And that one explains how you can use the box tool amongst other things. And I think that's a nice approach, is to help them formulate the costs and the benefit of keeping things as they are and of making those changes. And very often, by allowing and facilitating the time for the clients to just really verbalize and formalize their thoughts, that actually helps them then to move forward. But I do think it's important that that decision to move forward lies with them, and that they see our role as professionals is like having their best interest at heart and trying to just facilitate their thinking about it, rather than being seen as to push too much for a device that they may not be ready for.
Well, I think that's all the time we have left, unfortunately. Thank you so much, Cherilee, for taking the time to present your excellent session today. We are so grateful to you, and thank you for sharing your knowledge with us.
Thank you so much to all of you. Thank you for the wonderful questions, the tech support, and for the very kind invitation. I hope you all have a great week further. Thank you.
So I just wanted to remind everybody of some upcoming webinars. We've got employment law considerations for employers reopening their audiology businesses post COVID-19, so very topical right now, and that's going to be happening on June 4th. And then our next free webinar is going to be understanding cases of tinnitus with a normal audiogram. Is hearing loss undetectable? And that's going to happen in June 9th. So that's exciting. And I encourage you to visit canadianaudiology.ca/webinars for all our upcoming and archived webinars. And just a reminder that our webinars count towards CEUs. So please keep your thank you for attending email for your records. I just print it out and put it in a file, and more CEU information is on our website. Also, just a reminder that CAA has created and updated many helpful resources and links for our community. So please visit our website and look under professional resources and COVID-19 for more information on that. And on that note, thank you all so much for joining us, and we really appreciate it. And you have a wonderful afternoon and evening. Thank you so much. Bye.